push the brake and let's see what happens. Welcome back, and as you guys have seen, we finally have the engine and transmission back in the car, at least physically. It's hanging there all by itself. We finally put it in, and it really wasn't challenging. If you have a lift like I do, an engine cherry picker or so, it's not too challenging. I had to use the jack a couple times to kind of position the engine where I needed it to go. And also, really kind of the biggest challenge here is hooking up the exhaust. Kind of the exhaust was interfering with pushing the engine in, so I had to hook that up early. Not all the way, just kind of place it in there in the V-band, nice and lightly. And then, of course, the other thing, this car is all-wheel drive, so I had to make sure that the prop shaft was lined up. Beside that, once those two pieces are connected, you can just kind of push it in, jack it up, and make sure that it lines up nicely with the holes for the engine and transmission mounts. And yeah, otherwise it's pretty simple. Not really anything crazy. Making sure that you take care of any wiring that might be getting snagged or crushed. Always keeping an eye out for that. But otherwise, very simple, very easy. Not very easy, but decently easy. No crazy things had to happen. But I did want to mention one thing, and that is I wanted to give you guys a tip. Whenever you guys are doing engine and engine transmission mounts, be very careful. So one thing that I had on the Jetta, so if you see this piece, this is the supporting piece. This is essentially what's holding up the engine via these bolts here. This is made out of aluminum. And I've stripped this piece out. Actually, here is the piece from the Jetta. Very, very similar. I mean, the piece does the same thing. I'm sure this one's not exactly the same. If you guys look right here, these are the holes that the engine mount bolts into, and this is made out of aluminum, and it's very, very easy to strip out. Make sure you take the bolt and actually thread it in by hand all the way down. You do not want to go through trying to replace this engine support with the engine in the car. It's a huge pain in the butt, trust me, especially with the bumper on and everything else. So whenever you're doing this, make sure whenever you're threading, and actually here's another shot, the engine or the transmission case is also made out of aluminum, so it's also very easy to strip it out. So make sure when you're coming out with it, coming in with it, you're doing it by hand. You don't want to risk it, especially on the transmission side. So anyway, here we are with the engine and transmission back in the car. You can see we got a lot of work ahead of us. We have to hook up the prop shaft in the back. We have to hook up the HVAC hoses in the back. We have to mount the exhaust to the block. There's a couple bolts there. That's all in the back. We're gonna hook up the starter. We're gonna make sure we run all of our wires nicely. Make sure that everything is being plugged in where it's supposed to go. I kind of prepared in order, before I put the engine in, I laid out all the wires where they have to go. And then from here, it's going to be kind of figuring out where everything goes. Not a huge deal. Oh, here's actually something that goes over there. Very cool. And then after that, we have not seen this engine run. So we really don't know whether this thing runs or not. I really hope it does. My suspicion was that the original starter was busted by the frame rail when the frame rail was here. So I got a good used starter here. So hopefully that'll crank up the engine and start the engine. We are at a point now where we are putting things back on the car. We're no longer taking things off. We're putting things back into the car. We'll move in to hook up all of the cabling, all of the wiring, make sure that everything is good. Fill up the engine transmission with coolant. Pressure test it, make sure there's no leaks. Yeah, and then from that point we should be well on our way to making things right. Well, as you can tell behind me, the Tiguan is almost ready for its first start. It took me quite a while to remember and figure out where all the wires go, where they anchor, the routing and everything else like that. But eventually I got it figured out. I have all of the connectors accounted for. A couple of the connectors were busted, so I had to spend some time to fix those up, repair any broken wires, do things like that. And then also in my hurry to take the front end of this thing to try to get it started from the trailer, I was not really paying attention as to what was broken and what was not, because the driver had places to go, but he was nice enough to let me take apart the front end. So I'm figuring out what's broken right now. And so a couple pieces that I have on order, nothing really that critical, but some broken pieces nonetheless. And so, yeah, we're basically ready to start putting the radiator support on. And the radiator support has the radiator, the intercooler, the condenser, as well as the fans. Once we put those on, I want to hook up all the hoses. I want to fill it up with coolant and also pressure test it, make sure there's no leaks there. And then hopefully we can start it. Once again, to remind you guys, we have not heard this thing run. We don't even know if it runs. We tried to start it on that trailer, but that starter was messed up. And so as a result, we couldn't start it. And obviously I couldn't start it when it was out of the car. So now it's gonna be a real moment of truth. So yeah, when I fill it up with coolant, when I pressure test it, make sure that's all good. Also gonna check the oil, make sure all of that is good, and hopefully get it to crank. Hopefully here in a little bit, we'll hear this thing fire up. Fingers are crossed, might not happen, I don't know. We'll see, but let me take you around and show you what we've done so far. So here it is. This is where we are. As you can tell, everything basically from the frame rails back is connected, secured, bolted up. Connectors are plugged in and everything. But then if you look up here in the front, we have the intercooler pipes disconnected. We have the radiator hoses also not connected. Where's this one? Oh yeah, that's the other one down there. Air conditioner lines also not connected. Fans not connected. Yeah, so I didn't show this to you guys. It was kind of, tedious, making sure that the routing of all of the cables was correct. I really had to go back to my videos when I was taking this car apart in order to follow along. For more? More? So once again, guys, thanks so much. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like it. And reach out to me on Instagram at Eurospec Garage. Reach out to me on VW Vortex as well. I'm posting all these projects on VW Vortex. And yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.